Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke. Today is the 17th of August and it's interesting. The next few days, here's my morning weather report. The next few days are actually going to be warm and kind of humid. And right now it seems like I've got light on because it's very overcast outside. But it does seem like the light is starting to, I think they said by 7 it would come in. Speaking of 7, tomorrow's going to be the last day I do the live stream at 6:30. I'm going to start doing it at 7, and I realized I should put a note up today about that. It is going to be a bit of an interesting weekend for me, and I do find it interesting that at least here, the kind of weather that we're having, and I'm not sure if this is extratropical weather with, tropical systems that come up the Atlantic, or if it's just late August. I don't know, it could be either. But I feel like it's interesting that the shift that's supposed to take place, we've been talking about this Grand Cross all week. The shift is going to take place, I think the 20th is the last day, and the 20th is the day that actually all of this fog and this new round of fog and humidity, much cooler, I might add, but this new kind of hazy weather is going to push out again on the 20th at some point during the day. So so that's kind of nice, because then by evening, certainly by Wednesday the 21st, we'll definitely be in a much better space as far as all that goes. Today is the day that we are having the Chiron class. So I have a lot of people who are going to be, I forget how many people I have now. Let me just think. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, I think. 6 people have signed up for Chiron. And if you haven't signed up yet, I think registration closes it closes this morning. So if it's something you still wanted to get in on, like I said, I'm doing everything virtually, so I can just email handouts and stuff like that. It's not like I have to print anything up. But I'll be having that class at 2 o'clock this afternoon Eastern time. Right now, like I said, it's 6:32, and so I'll be having it at that time. So, I don't know who's going to be joining me this morning. Saturdays are always touch and go, because I think there's a lot of people who are, or maybe a lot of them are going to be in the class this afternoon, so they're kind of doing other stuff this morning. But I know one person who's usually on messaged me, and last night I was up at it. I woke up at 1:15, and I happened to look at my phone after, around 1:30ish. I looked at my phone, and I know somebody who's usually on this live stream who was going to did message me about something. So, and I saw that I think she was still up. So I'm like, she might not be up for this either. So anyway, we'll see who joins. But today, okay, so it's interesting because with all the Azrael communications we've been talking about during the week as well, the 17th was kind of pointed out as an important day, and I'm thinking, well, it's because of the full moon, and it's like, no, actually, the full moon is going to be Monday. So the full moon is not the full moon. There's still more coming by the full moon for this. Even though I'm not, I'm technically part of the fixed signs. I'm between a cardinal and a fixed sign, so I'm not one of the mutable signs that it's supposed to be directly affected by this. But if you do have planets in 17 degrees of any of the mutable signs in your chart, that area is going to be affected. And for me, this is in the 12th house. I have Mars in the 12th house, and Mars right now is conjunct Jupiter, and it's opposing Saturn. And for me, that's happening in the 12th house. So those of you who know astrology know that the 12th house is a very complicated place. And so again, you don't really know what to expect. I was working yesterday, and there was a couple of things that came up that I want to talk about. I mean, it's kind of all blending together into the topic I wanted to discuss today. Because when I was working with Karenna yesterday, I had gone up, I had an appointment, a Rouhani appointment that I was doing for somebody at her place. And before they came in, we were trying to plan some more classes and things, so there'll be more information about that up in Milford. We're going to be doing, I'm doing astrology class up there. I might do Chiron in person there. We're talking about that, and I'm going to do another Reiki 1, I think, in October. I have Reiki 2 coming up this next weekend. So I realize there's the pool of people who can take that is limited. And generally, if you've taken Reiki 1 with a person, you want to take Reiki 2 with them. But there are some people I know who have taken Reiki 1 and would like to just take Reiki 2 with somebody. So if you're in that area and you want to take it with me next Saturday, I'm offering it, the Reiki 2 attunements, and teaching about, all the things that go along with that. So anyway, we were planning classes, and I was telling her a little bit, because there's some people who I will share some of the more personal aspects of this whole shift. And Corinne is somebody who I've known for a while, and she's somebody I sort of trust with that. So because I was just trying to explain to her about certain things that have been going on, because we do tend to talk about each other's journeys to some degree. And when I told her certain things, it was just, she said to me, one of the things she had said to me was that the first time I ever walked into her shop, because I don't know if now is the time to admit this to you, she said, but I was really intimidated by you when you came in. Now, mind you, anybody who knows me, I'm not a person who wants to come in and give you shit. It's not that kind of intimidating. But for whatever reason, even when I come in, and I'm just kind of like I am on this live stream. I'm pleasant, friendly. But people, for some reason, and that's not the first time I've heard that word used to describe me. I've heard a lot of people say, you're very intimidating. And I'm like, why? I just talk to people normally. I don't walk up to people and, I don't know. I don't get in people's face about anything. I'm not, and they said the thing that makes me intimidating. And mind you, she didn't think I was intimidating in the sense that I was a mean person, but just that I don't know if I was talking about my experience or what I don't remember exactly what our conversation was, but people feel that I have a lot of experience and stuff. And I guess the way that I talk, judging too, because I live in a neighborhood of people who are not all of them are college graduates, and I'm not saying that in a demeaning kind of a way. They're just factually, they're not college graduates. And some of them said they have trouble understanding me and I'm not trying to talk to people, quote unquote, over their head. Okay. I don't like to look at people. I don't talk down to people. You know what I mean? I don't want to use a lot of words that people don't understand, but at the same time, I'm thinking, well, I feel like I'm just speaking ordinary words, but I do have a very large vocabulary. I studied, the Latin, and I studied other Romance languages, and so I don't know. I just have a huge bank of words, and I like to use it, and it's not because I'm trying to be, high and mighty or anything. That just happens to be my thing. I have lots of words. That's one of my things. And so for some people, I don't know if that's the factor, but they said there's just something that they initially find overwhelming or intimidating. And, and again, I'm a person, I think this is why I'm especially one of those people who feels like I'm very mindful of people's boundaries, because I feel like I don't want people to feel like I'm charging into their boundaries, because I'm most certainly not. Or there's something kind of, not exactly unsafe, but something that, it's not that they think I have a bad energy, but it's one that there's an intensity there that seems to frighten them. And I have this in relationships too, with men. I think there's an intensity there that seems to frighten off a lot of people. And I'm kind of thinking, well, how do you define that? Now, I think some of what I've learned, some of this 12th house stuff that's been uncovered might explain some of that intensity, but I'm not going to get into that here. But it's the subject of intensity that I want to bring up today, or that intimidating factor that seems to have, and it seems to be connected to voice. Okay. Although even when I didn't have a voice, even when I remember being in middle school, you'd be surprised. I was a very different person in middle school. I didn't want to talk to anybody at all. I dreaded the idea of speaking in front of anybody, and the idea of taking a speech class, even in college, it was the idea of taking a speech class was I thought I was gonna die, It's I absolutely hated talking to people, because I had some very, very bad and traumatic experiences trying to talk in front of people. But, as you can see, I've gotten over that. I routinely will stand in front of large groups of people, and if they look at me like they're bored, or they kind of give me funny looks, I don't even care. So I'm like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. But it takes years to get there sometimes, especially if you've been an introvert the first part of your life. But I remember even when I was younger, people had a vibe about me. People would say that, there were certain things that people would say, that which they perceived as kind of a natural arrogance or something. And I'm like, I mean, that could have been a projection too. But I'm like, there's a lot of things you can accuse me of being. Arrogant is not one of them, because I don't ever talk to anybody like I think I'm better than them. I don't think I'm better than anybody. I mean, everybody's kind of what they are. I just know, but what it is for a lot of people, I know things and I talk about things. Oh, you're talking about things, so that's like an arrogance. Now, what that kind of gets back to is it gets back to what I've talked about the scripts in society and the scripts that people have about women and women's voice. Okay, because the word that, when I asked Azrael this morning, I said, okay, what do I want to talk about on today's live stream? The word came up, bialo. And bialo is the angelic word for voice. So, so the idea is that I think maybe it's been a defense mechanism through my life, but I've gone to school a lot. I've learned a lot of stuff. I read a lot. I read a lot, but see, I read a lot in an era when lots of people read. Like, it wasn't like I was unusual for reading. Might be considered a little nerdy for reading, but I read a lot, and so I can refer back to a lot of things because I've just read a lot of stuff. There's also a lot of stuff I haven't read. To be fair, there's a whole lot that I haven't, and I think there's this almost perception of people who are well read as being kind of I don't know, intellectually ivory tower types or something, but and I enjoy having those kinds of conversations, but and I do actually understand sometimes how people who are in that kind of business can be a little, like they are better than people. So I don't know, maybe that's the association for people. But to me, I'm just as happy going out and talking about like microbrews. I don't need to talk about stuff. I talk about whatever stuff people want to talk about. It's fine with me. I'm not, I don't necessarily know everything about what other people are talking about. Sometimes you can learn stuff from people, but there's a lot of things that I've done, and I've traveled a lot, so I have a lot of experiences. And it's not so much that, and my feeling is just like, okay, well, I wanted to learn things and I wanted to enjoy my life. It's like a very ninth house kind of a thing. My ninth house is a very active zone for me. That's that strong Sagittarius energy where I like to learn things, and I like to learn about things that are hidden too, which is why I have this interest in more esoteric kind of stuff. So, but I've noticed that that's kind of the thing through my whole life, whether it was in the church that I belonged to, whether it was in the my workplace, even within other certain groups, it was almost like, it's weird. It was almost like there was an energy of mine that people seemed to feel that they had to control, or they had to say that they knew more, or that they were better. Like there was a competition that goes on. I think I was thinking about this too as I was prepping for the Chiron class, because there are certain Chiron wounds that can be, that can really be intimidated by, or feel that they have to prove that they're one up. Like that's part of the insecurity of the wound, because maybe they feel like they think that people think that they're stupid or something, which generally people are not stupid, just because people don't always express themselves in a certain way. And part of the reason I'm a professor is I'm trying to teach people, like, okay, well, this is how you can, because I had to learn from somebody too. Well, I don't know. I guess, what was I born knowing? I don't know. I was born knowing a lot of different things. Like I felt like I could read from the time I was already starting to read by the time I was 3. So this could be a past life, concurrent life thing as well. Just I had a lot of book knowledge. And libraries appear a lot in my dreams, and I did work in libraries most of my life. So, so I don't know. So in any case, the point of bringing this up is that it seems to be something around voice. So if you have a voice that can speak clearly, that can communicate that with experience, and that may project a certain kind of confidence, people don't like that. It's really interesting. And some people, and by the way, I'm not suggesting that Corinna doesn't like that, but she did find it because a lot of people think like, oh, am I going to be able to have a conversation with you? And the answer is, of course you are. Like, I'm not assuming, I love it when I find, I loved being in grad school because you would find other people who would be like this as well, who have these kinds of interests, let's put it that way. Not everybody has the same interests. So I'm of course interested in what other people are, and other people have their own ways of expressing, things, and it's not like, the people think that I'm looking at them and judging, you know, how intelligent I think they are or whatever. And no, I don't do that. The only people I tend to get very judgy of are the people who actually come out and they try to say, well, you know, I'm going to prove I'm smarter than you. And I'm just like, really? Okay. Have at it, you know? But, and I don't know, maybe they are smarter than me. I don't know. But I don't like being approached in a confrontational way like that because I'm not a confrontational person when it comes to that. I don't, you know, it's a projection. It's a projection sometimes of the insecurity people might have about whether they know enough or how much they know. And, you know, so I don't know. And again, I'm not saying this because I think I'm some kind of a, you know, that I do know something more than other people. I mean, I have certain things that I do know that other people don't know. Okay. That's why they come to me for stuff. But I think just as far as, I think sometimes too, that's the reason people are reluctant to coach with me too, because they're thinking like, oh, you know, do you know all this stuff that I don't know? And although sometimes you do go to somebody because you want to talk to somebody who's had some experiences that you can talk about or relate to. So anyway, I feel like I'm kind of going a little bit of a circle with this, but the point I think I'm trying to get to here is that when you speak with a very direct voice, a lot of people say that they like honesty and they like clarity. And I find that the reality is that people don't like that. They don't like it from women. You know, and the more and more that you look at the script, the cultural script, if you're somebody who just kind of, and again, speaking up for yourself, a lot of people will confuse empowerment with like bitchiness, okay? Like, you know, oh, she's going to be in there, and she's going to be in your face, she's going to tell you what to do. That's not what it is. If somebody feels like you're not being listened to, that's always been a thing of mine. If I feel like I'm not being listened to when I was a kid, I really would like ramp it up because I'm like, excuse me, you know, there's a conversation going on and I'm being talked over. And I would be told, shh, you don't do that, you know? And I think I'm working with a lot of people, I've worked with a lot of people in what I do who have had similar issues with voice. And there's been a lot here around creativity and voice, being able to speak your truth, being able to use your voice. So that's just it. And I'm just kind of like, that's really interesting that's a vibe that comes across to people as intimidating, like not being afraid to use your voice. Because I think that's really the crux of it. Some people are in admiration of it. Other people are afraid of it or think, oh, you know, you're not, like there's an automatic unconscious script, I think, in a lot of people, especially women, that you're not really supposed to do that. You're supposed to, you know, be deferential and make it seem like, you know, I mean, yes, there is a thing about being a good listener, which I also am. I'm actually a very good listener. I shut my mouth for long periods of time and let people talk. And if I feel like I have a thought about something, but if I feel like they're not done, then it's like, oh, okay, then, you know, you finish before I jump in. But, you know, and I always reflect their experiences back, and I'm always thinking about it like, okay, you know, I do genuinely listen to people, which also has its own kind of interesting things. Like when you work in a certain public space, sometimes that will attract certain people to you. People maybe who are like if you're working in like a public library, like I did, you know, like you get very lonely people who would come around because they'd be like, oh, okay, you seem like you're nice and you're a good listener. But I've also been told, there's been a number of people who have told me that I'm intimidating. And so it was just interesting to hear her say that the other day. I mean, she doesn't think that about me now. Because once people know me, they know I'm not the least bit intimidating. And I'm not, you know, somebody who, I know I don't really even think about things. People will be like, oh, you have all these degrees, you have this and that. And I'm like, yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't, I still don't, still tend to feel like I don't have enough. Like, maybe I should have more education. I mean, even my guides are kind of like, nah, you probably, well, I mean, we're always learning something all the time, right? In terms of formal education, I don't know that, you know, there might be a class here and there that I want to take, but it's not so much that I need any more formal education. But it's interesting how, so really it has to do with like a fearlessness of voice. And we've talked a lot about being a lion recently, right? The idea of not being a sheep and being a lion. And I think a lot of times, and it can be men too, or men may not expect that from women. Men may expect that there seems to be like a ritual or a social script about how women are supposed to behave. And when women don't, and a lot of women I think now are not falling into that social script, and men are going, oh, well, I don't know how to talk to women anymore. And it's like, no, women don't have to be kind of like, oh, you know, they don't have to be cutesy and demure. You know, that's not something, and I kind of think, why do you want that? Like, is that, I don't know. I don't I mean, you know, when I deal with people who are very, I mean, I don't mind if people like laugh or if they're silly or whatever. I mean, that's fine. I mean, if that's someone's, I'm like, okay, you know, that's cool. But if I feel like someone's doing it, I don't know. It just to me, I'm like, if somebody was just like that all the time, I don't know. I don't know how I would feel about that. It's just, especially if it's being done with effect, I think is what it is. If it's not just somebody who just, you know, because laughing at stuff, I think, is a good thing. I think being joyful is a good thing. Sometimes you need somebody like that around. You know, if you're feeling like a, you know, if you've been taking a little bit more pessimistic view of life, that you might want that somebody to, kind of, you know, somebody to lighten the mood. You know, but I don't know. So I mean, you could tell me in comments if you think like that about me. I don't know. It's just very interesting to hear that kind of a thing reflected back. But I think what that can happen, I think the reason they're asking me to bring it up, because I think a lot of people end up with blocks in their lives, intuitive blocks, kind of an inability to see certain things, or maybe not wanting to see certain things. Okay, I've heard that theme as well. I don't want to see and I don't want to know. In regard to just things that their own intuition is telling them. And so I think what it is it's saying, you know, I think this is why also we hear Azrael saying, stop being afraid. Like, don't be afraid to be yourself. Don't be afraid to speak up. Because I think a lot of people are afraid to speak because they think, I'm going to get something wrong and I'm going to sound stupid. Because you shouldn't also be afraid to go, if somebody asks you something and you don't know, to go, I don't know. I mean, there's like I said, that's a phrase I use a lot. People will ask me specific questions. Oh, do you know about this? Have you read that? Have you seen this? And I'm like, nope, not a clue. Especially when it comes to like TV shows and movies and stuff. Like, a lot of people think I should teach myth that way. I'm like, yeah, but I have no familiarity with any of that. Like, I've seen certain movies, like I've seen the Lord of the Rings movies and stuff, but I'm not, that's not what I'm, you know, I mean, I could learn about that, but for some reason, I'm just not a movie watching person. I think it's because when I get visuals come into me, they really like stick in my whole vibration, and so I don't know how else to put it. So to me, if a movie is something that is very jarring in a certain way, it can kind of leave me feeling like really off for days, or it can make me in a space where I'm like, okay, like it's like what some people will say about triggery novels and stuff. I'm just like, okay, I just prefer not to look at this kind of stuff, because I just want to control the input in terms of what's affecting me creatively, you know, a lot of the times. So I don't know. So I think so it's interesting. I think this idea of, and I don't know if other people experience this, but certainly women might experience in the sense of like people being told they're too bossy, or they're too direct, or they're too, and I'm, like I said, I have never, ask anybody who's worked for me, I have never been bossy. Okay. If I have people who give me an attitude, I'll generally give it back, but I'm not a bossy person. I don't walk in and say, you have to do this because I said to do it that way. You know, generally I will suggest something and I assume if you need help from me, you'll ask for it. Otherwise, you'll do your job. You know, you need flexibility, you need to pick up the kids after work, you need this and that, yeah, sure, whatever you need. Yeah, I'm not somebody, I've never been when I was a boss, I was never an inflexible person with my staff. And I wasn't there to rule with an iron fist. Because to me, ruling with an iron fist indicates that you're not confident in yourself, you know, that you're afraid, because that's the thing too. We are kind of in an environment where we think that someone being strong and aggressive is the right kind of a person. Like, that's the way to use Mars energy. I do have Mars energy in the 12th house, and that may be the other thing that people pick up on. But I'm like, yeah, but the whole point is to learn to use that energy in a constructive and creative way, not in a way to, intimidate others or lord your authority over others, you know? I just think it's interesting that some people think that either I'm going to think that they're stupid, or that I'm going to think, and I'm like, that's never going to be the case. I don't think anybody, I mean, you know, I don't treat anybody, everybody's entitled to have their own experiences and think about things in their own way. My whole thing is about validating experiences. But it's very interesting because when I talk about mine, which are different from a lot of people's, because there's a lot of people who don't travel, there's a lot of people who don't do certain things, and there's people who've traveled more than I have. I mean, I've pretty much stuck to like the, UK, Ireland, like, that area. So it's not like I'm as widely traveled as some people are. But, I just feel like, for a while, what we'll do after a while is say, oh, well, people might think something, so I guess you should hide your light under the bushel, right? Oh, well, and I think that's kind of what the message is here. Don't hide your light under a bushel. It's like, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. And sometimes people can feel that as an intimidation. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I said, I'm talking about it strangely because I'm kind of thinking, I don't quite know how to talk about this because it's weird to me that people feel that way. But I have heard this from men too, and I hear it more from men, I think, than from women, and it's so yeah. There's just something, and I guess it depends on your approach to knowledge. If you want to learn, if you're in the mode for expanding your horizons and learning, you might think, oh wow, that's cool. This, you've had these experiences, and I think it's cool to hear other people's experiences too. It's not all about me, but also. But I think people who are afraid of that, they're just kind of like, oh, so you're one of those bossy women. You're one of those, I think there's a pattern there, and I don't think I'm the only person who deals with this. I think there's a lot of times where people are told like, you should know what your place is, right? And I'm like, yeah, I know what my place is. But it does. It can make it really hard because people. Like, I've had that in relationships. I can't tell you how many times where I feel like it's a competition. And I'm like, why are we in competition? There's no competition here. You don't have to prove that you're better than me. I'm not trying to prove that I'm better than you. And why do you think that? Like, all that tells me is that you're totally insecure with the person that you are. I mean, when I'm talking about boyfriends and stuff who have done that. And so I'm just like, so that time, that's what I said. I just, if that's the way it's going to be, I just can't be bothered. I'm not, it's that kind of a thing. But it's a shame too, because you do want to connect with people, and I don't want to be in a position where I'm not connecting, but at the same time, I'm not going to not use my voice. Okay? I'm not going to be told like, well, the best way is for you to just, but it doesn't matter. I mean, people just, I seem to project it to people even when I don't say a word. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a perception I've had reflected back at me a number of times. And again, I don't think she was saying it to me in any way that I was like offended by or anything like that. And I'm not always offended by people saying that, but I'm always curious about it because I'm like, I really, I don't see myself as an intimidating person. I'm just a regular person. I'm nice to everybody, unless I'm attacked. But generally speaking, and even then, sometimes it's just kind of like, dude, what's up with that, But yeah, I'm not there to, sometimes I just find it interesting, but I've never been somebody who's like that. I feel like I like always try to be very authentic with people, and that may be the other thing too. A lot of times people are not used to being authentic. Like there's a way you're supposed to do things or a way you're supposed to behave, and I'm thinking, well, I'm just being myself. And that's when you start to get that social pushback against being yourself, even if you're not doing anything that outrageous, you're just existing in a way that for whatever reason comes across as strange to people. So, I mean, again, the more that I have, the more that's kind of been uncovered, the more this 12th house space of mine has been uncovered, the more it might make a little bit more sense to me. But we are at 7 o'clock already, so I'm going to do a reading, but anyway, so I don't know if other people have been told that. I guess maybe that's the feedback I'm going to be looking for here. Has anybody else ever been told that they're that way? Especially if we're talking about women. Are there men who look at women and say, yeah, you're intimidating? And what makes you think that? I'm always curious about that. Now, in her case, she had said to me, well, it just seems like you knew a lot of things. And it's like, okay. So in other words, like, oh, this person has a lot of knowledge and maybe, doing what I do, I don't have as much knowledge. I run into people all the time where I know for a fact I don't have as much knowledge as them. And it's weird to be around academics too, because when I go to conferences, especially in Britain, people are very, very like this, and they're very, very closed off. And they don't want to talk. They don't want to exchange ideas. Alan Watts again. Oh, I knew I could bring it in. He was talking about when he used to go to philosophy conferences, and he says, yeah, everybody would talk about everything but philosophy. You didn't dare talk about philosophy, and you didn't dare attract students, because who do you think you are? You dare not get a following because, if you're popular. And I had actually, I do know that. I have also heard this from other faculty that I've worked with, that if you're popular, the other faculty kind of shun you because they're like, oh, do you think you're better than I am? And it's funny. It's really weird. It's like this weird intellectual competition. And some people seem to feel like we're playing a riddling game, or we're in this thing. And again, I'm not suggesting that Corinna thinks that, but it's interesting how a lot of people, their first reaction, if you sound like you're intelligent, that their first reaction is, oh, I think you're above my league or out of my league to talk to. And I'm like, it's fascinating. I would say to those people, well, that's silly, because anybody can talk to me about anything. I don't care. My life experience is not defining for everybody else. So I'm always interested to hear other people's perspectives and points of view. Anyway, so I'm going to do the reading. But the thing that kept me up last night, which I was going to talk about in the beginning, was the fact that I had a dream that I was dead. And in this dream, I was actually... Now, I had a dream, I think I talked about dreams I'd had about... I do have what they call death dreams, and I had a dream back in January, about 2 weeks before my uncle died. And it was basically, this was in like the same house, the same structure. It's always kind of a wooden house that's got like a glassed porch, but it's not like all... It's like, there's a lot of windows in it, but it's like also got like wood in between. You know what I mean? It's like there's a foyer that's got this glassed in, and then there's like windows, almost kind of in the way my house is, but it's not exactly this house. And it was like, my tombstone was like in the ground, like you would see like in a church, like if you go to Westminster Abbey and you see, or you go to any actually old English church and you'll find them on the ground, the slab with the who it is and who's buried, who's interred there, and so forth. But then there was like another piece of the monument that was like on a window. And then I had seen 2 carnations as well. And I might have even put them there. And I remember I was weeping at the thought but it was like I was dead, but I wasn't dead, And then it was odd because it was like these 2 people came and they were driving in a car. It was almost like a bus, but it was like a blue and violet color, which we think of as high chakra colors. But I was very, very suspicious of these 2. Because in this dream, my sister and her husband were there too. Like we were all standing in this house together talking. And then these 2 kind of came up, and I knew they were coming from. And there was something evangelical feeling about them. But there was almost like the one woman was a social worker. She had like a thing of papers, and the guy with her, who had been driving, because I saw them outside, thinking, oh, I wonder where they're going to park. Because if I'm thinking of this house, there's very few places to park. And so when I saw them, I was just like, when they came, they kind of, I knew they were going to be coming in. They were basically saying like, oh, no, you can live with the thing that you have, and we're going to show you how to do that. But when the guy sat down, I noticed that he had like, almost had a pack on. He had some kind of a tube, like he had an implant, and then he had some kind of liquid here that was like a blue color. And she was talking about, oh yeah, like and I don't even remember how she explained it. He said, oh, well, that's just to keep the intestines functioning, and that's just to keep this. And I was like, looking at this going, if I have the same thing as this guy, like there's no way I'm doing that. Like, get out of here. There's no way I'm doing that. I'm not going to live to be, that's not living. I'm not living to do that. It was very bizarre. And I woke up kind of feeling we got the guide card on the bottom, feeling very kind of unsettled. And then when I did some readings on it and stuff. And it's interesting because so I'm not quite sure. The fact that my sister came in and her husband, and I remember he came in, they were bringing like groceries in and stuff. I remember my brother-in-law saying he was really very tired. And I don't think, when I have death dreams, they're not about the people who are actually in the dream. So my sister watches this, doesn't need to freak out there. But it does suggest to me that there could be some kind of a thing. Because I also feel like this may be a death of a part of myself too. Like there may be some part of the past that's finally dead, and it's like I'm mourning it and letting it go. I mean, that's kind of more the way I feel about it. But then I had another weird dream about, talking to somebody, being at work at a job. I don't know what job it was, but the basement was my mother's basement, and there was this guy there who he reminds me actually of my neighbor's son, but also like a guy that like my ex was friends with. But in both cases, whichever person it was, they had kind of a similar look. They were a nice person. It wasn't like they were a jerk or anything like that. But they had gone downstairs, but it was like I was talking about this person to somebody else, and I'm like, oh yeah, they're really great, they do a great job, they go downstairs, they do, and the guy just kind of smiled, and he's like, well, I don't like going down there because they're down there, and we could hear movement under our feet, and I'm like, nobody else is supposed to be here. He's like, yeah, they're down there, and they scare me. And so yeah, I was like, they're really intense, unraveling kind of dreams here. And so anyway, that's why I've kind of woken up like, but there's a whole lot going on. So I knew something was going to come up on the 17th. I still actually don't know if there's going to be anything else that comes up. I guess I'll find out. But if it reflects any outside event is what I mean by that. Let's look at our reading for today. Yeah, our first card is We Are the World. And this is interesting because I always think of the Rouhani angels, the way that they kind of seem to like dance in a circle around everything. So that's the center thing, there's, and I feel like this is about, okay, so I was talking about intimidation. This is about connecting with others, okay? Connecting with others when you're beyond illusion, okay? And you know what? That actually kind of reminds me as well, because I know that when I have been an employer in certain places, and when I've been the manager, and I've dealt with people who tend to be, I'm going to say, very narcissistic. These people always would come in, and they would always talk to me about what everybody else was doing. And I would just go, okay. But then they would always tell other people that they didn't like me. They didn't like coming to my office because I was too intimidating to them. And I'm like, I've never said a mean word to them when they've come in my office, but they know that I can see through them because I'm looking at them going, I know what this is really about. I don't say that to them, but I would just be like, oh, is it? Oh, that's interesting. Oh, okay. But beyond illusion. I think people feel like that could be a case of being able to see through another person. And again, if this is a reading that's being done a little more generally, then maybe you experience that as well. The external feeling of which we are aware, abundance. This is Zorba the Buddha. And that's the other thing too. Okay, when you have things that are paradoxical to people coming together, there's always this idea that you have to be one thing or the other, but you can't be both. And I've always said, no, we're integrated people. We can be both. You can be, a woman can be intelligent, she can be beautiful, she can be all these things. It doesn't mean that she's one or the other. It's almost like, or that you have to be this kind of a person or this kind of a person. If you live in a culture like here, where we have a lot of, kind of hardcore Republican types out this way, if I meet these people in a place and they see that like I drink beer and eat meat, they're like, well, wait, aren't you supposed to be like a vegetarian and this and that? And it's like, in other words, people don't know what to expect from you, and that may be part of the problem, because people have an expectation of what you're supposed to be and what role you're. You identify with this, therefore that means you're that. And when that doesn't happen, people kind of go, well, like something's off. Like you shouldn't be that way, because there's the split, the schizophrenia, the split. This is a card of having to choose. Having to choose between the head and the heart, having to choose between the social identity and having to choose between what's in the heart. And this just says, let go of both. Jump, let go of both. Doesn't matter, this is not about what identity am I going to assume. It's just, you just jump in. And that will lead to a flowering. So we have this Queen of Pentacles card. Yeah, somebody, and of course, if we think Pentacles, we're thinking about security. So being at home with yourself, right? Not only flowering and showing the gifts that you have to other people, but being at home with yourself. So, yeah. So anyway, this is, I know this is kind of a interesting topic in reading today, but it came up, and literally that was what came up this morning. It was like, yeah, this is what we want you to talk about. And I'm like, okay. And I always feel weird talking about it because it's just, it feels odd to me to talk about it. But I think it's important for people to think about it because I think in terms of social role, a lot of times I think we go out there, we project confidence, we're doing our thing, And then if we meet with certain kinds of resistance, we may start to be filled with self-doubt, like, oh, am I doing it wrong? Is there something I'm saying? Am I not approaching this right? Am I not this? Am I not that? And a lot of times that's the way that we end up kind of compromising, because we think, oh, well, the person I am somehow is not acceptable to people, so I have to modify it so that they're comfortable. And what this would be saying is, no, you actually don't have to do that. You know, it's not about that. It's just about diving in and being in the space you're in. And the thing is, I do feel that, you know, there's a lot of this social scripting that is changing. And this is probably why it's saying to you, yeah, I mean, that kind of a thing does happen and it does exist, especially among older generations and so forth. So yeah, there's something like it's almost a precociousness is the word, right? When you're a kid and because as a kid, I was always very talkative and always learning things and always reading things. And they describe that as being precocious. And I always, like, when I see kids that are precocious, I love those kids. Those kids who, like, I've read all this stuff and I want to know about all this stuff. I'm like, you are freaking cool. I like that. You know, I like people who are interested in learning things. And, you know, whatever it is they're into. Whatever it is they're into. It may or may not be anything I know anything about, but I think, you know, when people live passionately, that's the way they should live. And yeah, sometimes it seems like a paradox to people, because the bottom line is it's not an either or proposition. We live in that dualistic world. It says it's got to be this way or this way. It's got to be good. It's got to be bad. It's got to be this. It's got to be that. And it's just saying, no, actually, it doesn't have to be any of those things. It can be both and neither of those things at the same time. So, well, let me just pull one astrology card for us, because we are in kind of an interesting astrological space. So didn't have people joining me today, so this will be something for people to watch later and tell me what they think. Unless somebody's watching and Instagram hasn't told me, which, you know, wouldn't be the first time that happened. Oh, wow. All Gemini energy. Third house and Gemini. Okay. Communication and intellect. Now, remember, we're in Mercury retrograde right now, so maybe there's kind of this revisiting of how one communicates, or how one sees, how one is seen. Okay, so I think that might be part of it. But yeah, how one messages, how one presents themselves to the world. And I think you need to, I would suggest that you always need to present yourself authentically, even if there's certain people, you know, think about what kind of audience you're trying to reach with whatever you're doing. Or you're going to attract the people who are interested in what you do. But yeah, this is interesting, because a lot of this has to do with intellect and with messaging here. So whatever the message is, whatever message you're giving to people, just, you know, it's saying, make it the authentic message. Don't change your message because you think it's what somebody else wants to hear. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, I'm doing this as a live. Sometimes I know on weekends people join me or they don't join me, and that's totally fine. Like I said, I'm going to post something today about the live streams moving to 7. Tomorrow's going to be my last day doing it at 6:30, and so then it will be from like 7 to 7. I want to say it's a half an hour, but it ends up being 45 minutes. So, and yeah, the Chiron classes today. I'm also doing an intuitive development class starting next Sunday. I'm doing Reiki 2 on the 24th, and I'm starting the intuitive development on the 25th. And if you want to pay week by week and join, you can do that. Or people, if they think they're going to take all 10 weeks and they know they're going to be there, you can pay the full price at once and get a $50 discount on it. So just check out my website, transitionlifecoaching.net. Link is in my bio. If you're on YouTube, I do have the link actually it'll be in the description box of the video. So thank you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And those usually who catch up are people who take some of my classes. So I'll see some people this afternoon. Yeah, so have a good one. We'll talk soon.